Sella and Bjorn in a brand new segment on the show.
This is good, man. We've always wanted to run a segment called Relationship Corner, covering all things relationships, like work relationships, friendships, marriages, parenting, and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to sort of make it...
That's the thing. I mean, unfortunately, in life, you have to deal with relationships all the time.
Yeah, no. So we'll get some experts in to talk to us about it. Hey? Today we're going to kick it off with the parenting place. And she's been in studio before. She's a great, great chat. Wonderful person. Her name is Sheridan Eketone. She joins us this morning. Good morning, Sheridan.
Morena.
All right. How to parent on the same page as your partner and avoid opposition. For those of you in the cars right now with the kids, this will be a great, great chat.
Yeah. So, it came up because... I mean, Sella and I, we see ourselves as father figures to Tabs, our producer. And sometimes we have different ideas about how to, best coach her and best bring her up.
Yeah, and I like to go to whoever I think is going to give me a yes, depending on what I'm going after.
See?
Wise.
That's it. I lose it sometimes and I walk out of the studio. It happens, right?
No, but everyone deals with this, right? Like, I mean, you're trying to raise kids and you've got two different people coming together to try and work this out. Is this a common thing that people have?
Very common. So the first thing I do in a coaching session is unpack parenting styles. And I think, we meet each other, we fall in love, we make these babies, and then it happens. We somehow disagree on how we're going to raise them.
Why?
Well, so that's a really good question. I think often our family of origin lays down like a foundation around how we will innately raise our babies. And you've got two people there. So often different families of origin, you would hope.
Yeah,
and,
I was going to say, that's
you
probably
really
a
do want to
caveat to
make
most
that.
relationships.
Yeah, and so we've had different experiences and we've had different
Upbringings, childhood.
expectations, the way that mum and dad held space for our emotions, the way they disciplined us. It kind of comes into play without us even thinking. So I don't know if this has happened to you guys, but I've had moments where I've innately said something and I'm like, that is my mum. And it's like, it's out there and I didn't instinctively go, I'm just going to be Barbara Hunt today. It just comes out. And that's so many moments we have in parenting is a little bit like that.
It's one of those things that's interesting, right? Like in life, if you want to drive a car, you get a manual, you have to read it, you've got to do a test, you go through multiple tests, someone assesses that you're safe to do that. Lots of your work, you go through training, years to get a degree, all this kind of stuff. But anyone can just sort of have kids and then it's just like, oh, well, that should be natural.
Yeah.
Go for it. You know, and then so you're just trying to figure it out kind of as you go a lot of the time. And depending on where you've come from, they can collide pretty hard.
Yeah.
Does that bring up a lot of tension? Do you see that commonly?
Yes, it does. Sorry, Sheridan.
Do you want to have a coaching session? Yeah, I think just the differences in our parenting styles. So at Parenting Place, we talk about, the sergeant major, and that's that classic do as I say, not as I do, that real all rules and structure and quite forceful. And then you've got your jellyfish, and the jellyfish parent is that sort of loving, caring, lots of love, want to be my child's best friend. And then we also have unplugged parents. And I think this is a challenge for all of us. How often are we actually physically present, but we're actually emotionally unavailable? And then last but not least, and I know you guys will be this, it's our parent coach. And the parent coach is this beautiful balance between rhythms, routines, and structure, but love, warmth, and connection. And so
that sounds like me. Yeah.
It does, hey, I reckon. But what we often find in a partnership is you might have a sergeant major and a jellyfish.
Yep.
And I see this all the time in my coaching room where innately one is more firm and wants to be about the rules, and the other is more about love and warmth and connection. And so my encouragement to parents, where there is that difference, it's thinking about how do we lean more into the middle. So it's not about your style is wrong and mine is right. It's sometimes, do I need to lean into firmness? And maybe one of you actually needs to be softer sometimes. So having those conversations together is...
Can we just recap the different... Are those the sort of four basic categories you put things into? So what are they again? Sergeant major?
Sergeant major, jellyfish, unplugged or absent, and parent coach.
Okay, we can dive into these a little bit more coming up. It's 8:30. I'm going to play some news headlines, but we'll talk about what do you do when maybe you're finding yourself as one of those and you get frustrated by your partner being a different one, and how you can try and find some middle ground on that. And we're talking, what do you do when two parents are on a different page with their styles of parenting? So we were talking before, you mentioned 4 sort of categories that you like to sort of loosely group people into for their parenting style. Can we recap those?
Yeah, so you've got your sergeant major. So children should be seen and not heard. We've often been raised by a sergeant major, very firm on the rules, do as you're told, basically. Then we've got our beautiful jellyfish, and jellyfish love warmth and connection, and they want to be their child's buddy. Then we've got unplugged. So we can all be unplugged emotionally, or we might be absent physically at times.
Well, could we dive into that a little bit more? I prefer calling it a wireless parent rather than unplugged. But is that just what, people that are not around, don't interact with their kids? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it can be a little bit of both. It might be a little bit of distance. We might physically be away, but actually more commonly it's actually that we are so wound up in our own emotional state that we're actually physically present, but we're not often emotionally present for our kids. And that's a real challenge. I think we all have moments of being unplugged. So it's being aware of how often am I here, but I'm actually switching off. It might be scrolling on your phone.
Well, that'd be a big one for people,
right? Like actually,
lifestyle as well with work.
Totally.
And I guess high-profile positions.
Yes.
Would make you a little bit busier as well, but again, I think it's good to come back to recognizing that, and talking with your wife or your husband as a partnership.
The phone thing's massive, and I'm guilty just as much as anybody else. But I remember just going to swimming lessons with our kids the other week, and I walked into where our 3-year-old was getting lessons. There's 6 different groups of kids in the pool.
Yeah.
I counted 19 out of 20 parents were on their phones, scrolling.
That's what they do.
And I'm not saying I've never been on my phone while the
know.
swimming lessons are on, but I was like, man, how many times are the kids looking up to be like, can mum see what I'm doing, or dad, and they're just on their phone, they miss it,
Yeah, we have 4 kids, and our youngest, when we would be at swimming lessons, she would be watching every time.
Yep.
She would get so mad if we were on the phone. But yeah, absolutely, we're missing moments by that device.
You mentioned, I brought up culture as a, when you're trying to be on the same page, and maybe culture is one of the reasons. Do you find that culturally with some of your clients, or what you're seeing and hearing out there, that's a stumbling block for a lot of people?
Yeah, I think what is really interesting in my coaching room, often I am inviting a parent to consider, where does my parenting style come from? And I think within relationship, that is a question that we want to ask. Where has it come from? And often there'll be cultural aspects, there'll be family of origin aspects. And often it's stopping and going, actually, what are the things within my parenting style that I want to take forward from my family of origin? What were those great things that mum and dad did that we can do for our kids? But equally, what are those things that when I was a kid, it really didn't work for me, that I want to leave behind? And that's where I'm always inviting parents to have that conversation, because what's going to happen is you are going to parent, and there'll be moments of conflict that these areas will flag up, and then you're going to be confronted. And so having some really good conversations. We want to do that away from the kids.
Yeah.
And not in the moment, not in the, my husband and I often will debrief after. So I just noticed. I noticed Layla's a little bit upset.
Afterwards, though, rather than in the midst, because nothing worse than a kid and a parent sort of having almost an argument, and then a side argument happening between the two parents about what the response is to the issue. I mean, that just becomes a total mess, right?
Or a lot of rescuing. So often, we think of that sergeant major and that jellyfish. A jellyfish will want to rescue the kids.
Yes.
So, and sometimes it's probably fair that they need to at certain points, but it's thinking about, can we have those generous conversations when the dust is settled, when it has calmed down. And I just am such a believer in rupture and repair. So where there is rupture in relationship, we need to see repair. And where there is repair, that's what strengthens relationship. So being gracious and willing to talk it through.
I might send that email through to my wife.
Send it to yourself, mate. Do you find, like, so we talk about the different categories, and I guess, you know, people have to do some reflection as to where they think they are on that scope, but often people's perception of themselves is probably not the most accurate representation. So is that good to maybe ask some other people or talk to somebody about, to be like, oh, maybe I am not as gooey and comfy as I thought. Maybe I am a bit more of a militant dictator in the house, and I didn't realise, you know?
So funnily enough, there's a place called Parenting Place, and we have parent coaches.
How great.
And honestly, it is my job, but for real, coming and sitting across from us and having the conversation, what I often see is a real generosity actually between two parents, because they know the family of origin stuff. They know what they've seen in the parenting space, and just being able to unpack it with that third person who can go, tell me a little bit more. When do you see that sergeant major rising up in you? And often, you know, we talk about in coaching, it'll often be when you're pushed that those harsher styles come out. And, you know, we might be a parent coach when we've had adequate sleep, when work is not stressful. But where we are pushed, we will lean into more of that innate parenting style that we have inherited from our parents. And that's, for me, that's why it's so important to reflect and to understand where it's coming from. What's
really encouraging when I hear you speak, Sheridan, is we're not perfect as parents, right? We always need to be talking with each other. And I get that as you're speaking about conversations, communications, because that's key. But I find what's encouraging is that people actually want to take the first step and come and see you guys to be able to go, okay, well, where can we improve? As a takeaway for somebody who's listening right now, who's a parent, what would be your one key or couple of key takeaways from our chat this morning?
Yeah, I think be generous with each other. Speak to each other about the conflict when everything is calm. And, you know, be curious about, what do I need to lean into? Is it, you know, what does it take to lean more into a parent-coach approach? Because often it's a little bit of a tweak. It's not a complete change. And use the strengths of your partner. So my husband is probably a great parent coach. I have to say that because he's here. No, but he is. But he probably has tendencies of Sergeant Major. But equally, I'm probably more of a jellyfish. So sometimes I need to lean into his firmness. And sometimes he needs to lean into my ability to be loving and connecting and soft.
I will make amends tonight.
Yes, you can.
How do you recommend people, you know, maybe they're struggling with this, maybe it's been an ongoing thing, because often I think in relationships, stuff can just sort of be, it can take a long time, right, without any real progress in an area. How would you bring up with somebody? So say there maybe one person out of the two is feeling really not great about it. The other person might not even be aware. To be like, hey, maybe we could talk to a parenting coach. For some people, that may feel like quite a, I don't know. Or an insult to, am I not good enough? Or some people may not take that, you know, same with like therapy, things like that, have an aversion to anything like that, like they've failed to need help. How would you recommend somebody bring that up with their partner if they don't think the response would be that open? Yeah,
you know, in an ideal world, we'd love to have both parents in the coaching room. We often see a parent on their own. So we will often start with one and then encourage the other to come. But I think it's more about framing it up about, how can we do this better? What are some ways that we can think about parenting in a different light? And honestly, that third person, that other voice that can just listen, the biggest privilege of the role that I have is to listen to often those, you know, as parents, we often have those fears inside, like, is there something wrong? Could I be doing this better? And so to be able to encourage and to call out the gold, and every parent just has beauty and a wealth within them. So yeah.
Well said, Sheridan. Where's the website? What's the website?
It is parentingplace.nz. And we have loads of articles. We've got a cool podcast with Dana Galloway and Jenny Hale. Lots of
And
resource.
online resources as well, right?
There are, yeah, online courses. If your kid is struggling with anxiety, we've got an amazing Untangling Anxiety online course as well. And then Toolbox, people will remember Toolbox and Building Awesome Whānau. Lots of resource.
Yeah, make sure you check it out on the website. Have a poke around on there and you'll find all kinds of great things and insights. And maybe you even want to get to the place where you book a session with a parenting coach. Be wonderful for people as well.
Sheridan Eketone, that's the name.
You're the man. Sure,
Make
Sheridan.
your reservation. Hey, thanks so much for coming in, Sheridan.
You're welcome.